Hi, I'm Anna. I just drove 9 hours through a snowstorm, hands tight on the wheel, heart pounding with excitement, and a cake box teetering on the passenger seat. Every mile I drove, I imagined the look on my little sister Emily's face when I walked into her engagement party. The way her eyes would light up. The way she'd throw her arms around me and whisper, "You made it." The snow pounded against my windshield, but it didn't scare me. I had done harder things for the people I love. I kept telling myself, this is worth it. She's worth it. When I pulled up to that glowing estate, all twinkling lights and champagne dreams, I felt like the best sister in the world. But the moment I stepped through those doors, everything shifted. The warmth I expected was replaced by cold glances, awkward smiles, and an air so thick with unspoken words, it nearly knocked the wind out of me. What I didn't know then was that the real storm wasn't the one I had battled on the highway. It was the one waiting for me on the other side of that front door. For anyone who's ever gone the extra mile for family and felt like a stranger in the room, for anyone who's ever realized too late that love doesn't always mean belonging, this is my story. And maybe, just maybe, it's yours too. The snow started falling just after dawn, soft and light at first, dusting over the city streets as I loaded the cake into my car. I wrapped the box in layers of blankets, tucking it in like a fragile child, the delicate white frosting and sugared violets barely trembling as I shut the passenger door. It wasn't just a cake. It was a promise, a symbol of love, of family, of all the things I wanted to remind Emily of when I arrived. I remember glancing in the rearview mirror as the city skyline disappeared behind me, shrinking into a blur of steel and glass. My heart raced with excitement. Emily had always been more than a sister to me. She was my best friend, my partner in childhood mischief, the person I called when life got messy. Somewhere along the way, though, we drifted. College, new jobs, new friends, her engagement to Daniel. It all pulled her into a world I barely recognized. But today, I was determined to bridge that gap. The storm wasn't supposed to hit until evening, but the weather had other plans. By midday, the flurries turned to thick, heavy snow, blurring the road and swallowing the landscape in white. My fingers gripped the steering wheel so tightly they ached, but I kept going. I stopped only once, a quick dash into a gas station for coffee. Shivering as I pulled on heels in the bathroom, whispering to my reflection, "It's worth it, Anna. She's worth it." When I finally reached the estate, the driveway sparkled under gold lights, the sound of laughter and music drifting through the iron gates. For a moment, I felt it. The magic of the night. The joy I imagined in Emily's face. The reunion I had played over and over in my mind. I handed my keys to the valet, lifting the cake like a prize, and took a deep breath as I stepped toward the front doors. What I didn't know is that sometimes the people you fight hardest for are the ones already closing the door behind you. The moment I stepped inside, I knew something was wrong. The warmth I expected didn't reach me, not from the chandeliers, not from the soft music drifting through the hall, and definitely not from the faces that turned my way. The first person to speak wasn't Emily. It was the valet, who blinked at the cake in my hands and asked, "Are you with the catering team?" I let out a soft laugh, brushing it off. "No," I smiled. "I'm family." But as I looked around the room, I realized I was the only one smiling. Emily stood across the room in a blushed silk dress, her hair curled to perfection. She was laughing, radiant, the center of every orbit. But when her eyes met mine, her smile faltered. I waited, thinking she'd rush over, arms wide, the little sister I had driven through a blizzard to see. Instead, she mouthed, "You actually came?" With a look that felt less like surprise and more like inconvenience. "I drove all day," I said softly, trying to make light of it. "Surprise?" But Emily didn't take the cake from my hands. She didn't even step closer. Instead, she turned to her bridesmaid, whispering something I wasn't meant to hear. She wasn't on the list, was she? I felt the shift like a crack in the floor beneath me. My heart hammered as I walked to a side table, setting down the cake next to delicate towers of macarons and PD4S. My mother floated past, kissing my cheek and whispering, "Just don't make this about you, okay? Tonight is for Emily." I laughed tightly, the kind of laugh you give when the ground is giving way. As I wandered through the room, I noticed the framed photos. Emily at prom, Emily on graduation day, Emily with friends. Not a single picture included me. At the gift table, the bridal party gifts were stacked neatly, my name missing from every tag. Then came a message, a group text I wasn't supposed to see. A bridesmaid's voice floated from nearby, clear as a bell. "She doesn't fit the look, we'll say the list was full." My breath caught, my chest tightened. I realized then, this wasn't a mistake, this was a plan. I found the coat room and sat quietly, phone buzzing in my hand. For a long moment, I stared at the screen, willing myself not to cry. But the truth, raw and undeniable, settled in like ice in my veins. When I finally slipped into the hallway, the music had swelled to a roaring celebration, and I walked slower, hugging my coat to my chest like a shield. A server gently blocked a seat I had eyed near the dessert table. "Sorry, that's reserved." I smiled and nodded, the kind of smile that says, "It's okay," when it absolutely isn't. The storm outside was nothing compared to the one unfolding in my chest. And yet, I stayed, because sometimes the hardest thing in the world is knowing when it's time to leave. I almost left that night. I stood outside in the snow, the cold biting at my cheeks, the sound of laughter echoing from the house behind me. My fingers hovered over my car keys, heart pounding, but something in me, something I hadn't felt in years, told me to turn back. The next morning at brunch, the house was filled again. Sunlight streamed through tall windows, glinting off champagne glasses and white platters of fruit and pastries. Emily stood at the far end of the room, a vision of calm perfection, her champagne flute raised. "This weekend," she said, smiling sweetly, "has reminded me how beautiful it is when family chooses love over ego." I felt it then, sharp and clear, the dig under the honeyed words. A few people turned to glance at me, and for a moment, the old version of me wanted to shrink. But not this time. I rose slowly, calmly, letting the room fall quiet. "Mind if I say something, too?" My voice carried, soft but steady. Emily's smile faltered. Aunt Carol's fork froze halfway to her mouth. "I drove 9 hours through a snowstorm yesterday," I began, my voice gentle. "With a cake I ordered just for Emily. It's still sitting in the kitchen, untouched." There was a rustle in the room. Someone coughed. Someone shifted in their seat. I heard the laughter, I continued, I heard the jokes. About how peaceful it would be if I never showed up at all. Emily's face went pale. "That's not what we meant," she started. But I lifted a hand, not to silence her, but to hold the floor. "I heard you," I said quietly, and for the first time in years, I'm done pretending I didn't. From my coat pocket, I pulled out my phone, tapped a button, and let the sound play. The recording from the hallway last night. Emily's voice, unmistakable, light with laughter. 9 hours for what? A pity cupcake? God, what if she'd crashed? A bridesmaid's voice snickered in the background. Honestly, I could have used the silence. When I looked up, the room was frozen. Emily's fiancé stared at her, mouth slightly open. My mother reached for her wineglass, cheeks pale. And for the first time in years, no one rushed to smooth things over. No one told me to lower my voice. No one came to Emily's defense. "I'm not here to ruin anything," I said quietly. "I just came to remind myself that love is supposed to go both ways." Emily lunged toward me, panic flickering in her eyes. "You don't get to twist this." But I took a step back, calm as snowfall. "You twisted it the second you decided humiliation was easier than honesty," I said, locking eyes with her. "You needed a villain, Emily. You just didn't expect her to walk out of the story." And with that, I turned, walking slowly through the stunned silence. The sound of my heels, the only noise in the room. Aunt Carol's hand brushed my shoulder as I passed. "Don't let them make you small," she whispered. For the first time in years, I felt tall. I left the brunch without looking back. The cold air outside hit me like a wave. But this time, it didn't sting. It felt clean, sharp, honest. A better kind of cold. Back in my car, I sat with my hands on the steering wheel, staring at the house in the rearview mirror. My phone buzzed again and again on the passenger seat. Messages poured in, from Emily, from my mother, from cousins I hadn't spoken to in years. None of them asked if I was okay. They asked why I had embarrassed Emily. They asked why I made a scene. They asked why I couldn't just let things go. But what they didn't understand, what they may never understand, was that I hadn't made a scene. I had just stopped playing a part. When I got home, I dropped my bag on the floor, slipped off my coat, and stood in the quiet of my apartment. The snow outside had softened overnight, leaving small patches of slush on the sidewalks, the storm finally retreating. I sat at my kitchen table, scrolling through the flood of messages. I didn't reply to most of them. I didn't need to. Emily called the next evening. For a moment, I hesitated. Then I picked up. Her voice was small, thinner than I remembered. "You just left," she whispered. "You disappeared, Anna, after everything." I closed my eyes, pressing the phone to my ear. That's how I've felt since I was 10, M. My voice was soft, not bitter, just a quiet truth I had carried for years. For a moment, she didn't speak. Then, in a voice cracking at the edges, she admitted, "I messed up. I was cruel. I didn't want you to come because I was afraid people would compare us again, and I hated how that made me feel." A strange mixture of sadness and relief washed over me. "You should have just told me," I said. "I would have sent the cake. I just wouldn't have driven 9 hours through a blizzard to deliver it myself." We both fell silent. And in that pause, something shifted. For the first time, I wasn't the one scrambling to make things right. A week passed before I opened my laptop and wrote a post I had been drafting in my mind. To anyone who's ever been made to feel like too much just for existing, you are not invisible. You don't need their permission to be here. Sometimes your story begins the moment you stop shrinking to fit theirs. I posted it and turned off my phone. I didn't need the comments. I didn't need the likes. I just needed the space. That weekend, I walked to the little bakery near my apartment and bought a small white cake with gold dusting on top. No name, no message, just peace. Back at home, I lit a candle, sliced the first piece for myself, and sat by the window watching the world outside. The snow had long since melted. The sky was clear, washed clean. Not every ending is loud. Some are quiet. Some are simple. And some, and got like this one, are just honest. And for the first time in years, that was enough. In the days that followed, the messages kept coming. Some were apologies, quiet, hesitant, not quite sure how to cross the bridge they had burned. Others were excuses dressed as explanations. And some were just silence, a silence I had known all my life, the kind that hums beneath polite smiles and family holidays and carefully staged photographs. I walked through my apartment slowly those first few mornings, noticing things I hadn't before, the soft creak of the floorboards, the way the morning light fell across the counter, the warmth of a space that was fully, completely mine. For the first time in years, I wasn't waiting for someone to call, to invite me back, to make room for me at a table I had long outgrown. Hammaly called again one afternoon. She was quieter this time, less defensive, more real. I started therapy, she admitted, her voice thin over the line. I don't know if it's too late, but I'm trying. I didn't say the words I once would have rushed to offer. It's okay, we'll fix it, I forgive you. Instead, I let the moment hang between us, let her sit with the weight of her own words. Good, I said softly. That's good, Em. And we ended the call, not with a resolution, not with a promise, but with an understanding that healing, if it came, would come slow. The truth is, sometimes we outgrow the people we love. Sometimes the family we were born into can't offer us the love we need. And that's not a failure. That's life. It doesn't mean we stop loving them. It means we start loving ourselves, too. On a quiet Sunday morning, I slipped on my coat and stepped outside. The air was brisk, but the sun was warm against my face. I walked without a destination, breathing in the cool air, letting it fill the parts of me that had been clenched for years. For the first time, I wasn't walking toward anyone, wasn't arriving anywhere, wasn't proving anything. I was just here. When I got back home, I sat by the window with the last slice of cake, watching the neighborhood stir to life. A mother walking her child to the park. A couple holding hands. A dog chasing its own tail. Life went on. And so did I. Before I logged off social media for the day, I glanced at the post I had shared earlier that week. Hundreds of messages filled the comments. People telling their own stories. Strangers offering words I had waited years to hear from the people closest to me. You are not too much. You are not invisible. Your voice matters. I didn't need their permission to speak anymore. And maybe that's the quiet revolution of healing, learning that your worth isn't measured by the space someone else gives you, but by the space you're willing to claim for yourself. As the sun set, I closed the window, blew out the candle, and whispered a quiet promise to myself. No more shrinking. No more explaining. No more waiting for a seat at their table. I am building my own. And with that, I turned off the lights, wrapped myself in a blanket, and let the night come. Not as a storm to brace against, but as a peace I had finally earned.